So I don't know how many of you guys have seen this story. I think it kind of blew up online, but there's this woman who goes to the University of Oklahoma, and I believe she was like a top level swimmer. I guess a D1 swimmer who's had a very successful swimming career. But she goes to University of Oklahoma, and I don't know if she's majoring in psychology, but she has this psychology class where she has to write a paper, and the paper is basically related to like gender roles in society. And in the paper, she starts writing, basically citing God in this circular reasoning about God made women womanly, and that's why they need to adopt womanly roles, and God made men manly, and that's why the manly men have to do manly things. It's very, like, childish, like, in the nature of a woman is being a woman, so that's what you got to do. Like, just stupid. Let's call it. It's stupid. Like, there's no fucking logical reasoning or deduction or argument or empirical evidence or anything. It was dumb. It was a stupid paper. Well, guess what? The assistant professor basically flunked her for that. And then she started crying discrimination. And the right-wing outlets picked up the story and ran with that, arguing that this is like anti-Christian discrimination because this fucking idiot wrote an idiotic psychology essay where she basically invoked God as her only fucking argument. So this is in Salon. OU student claims bad grade is an attack on her faith. OU psych student appeals failing grade on Bible-based essay that ignored instructions and lacked any academic rigor. A University of Oklahoma psychology student is challenging a failing grade after submitting a gender roles reflection essay that heavily referenced the Bible, sparking debate over free speech, academic standards, and the role of personal belief in college coursework. Samantha Fulnecki, a junior psychology major, submitted a 650-word reaction paper in a course assignment asking students to reflect on societal expectations of gender and children. The instructions allowed students to incorporate personal experience or perspective, but emphasized thoughtful engagement with the original article. Fulnecki's essay instead leaned heavily on biblical teachings to argue for traditional gender roles without citing empirical research or quoting specific scripture. The graduate assistant grader gave the essay a 0, noting that it contradicts itself, heavily uses personal ideology over empirical evidence, and contains passages that are offensive. The student claims the failing grade amounts to religious discrimination and a violation of her free speech rights. Free speech rights. Let me ask you a question. By that logic, do you have a right to get a good grade on every piece of work that you do in an essay in school, no matter what the topic is? Because if they give you a bad grade, you could say, well, you're violating my free speech rights. Is that where we're at now? That's what free speech means? I get to write a shitty essay and get a good grade for it? Okay. She has appealed the grade and contacted state officials and religious freedom advocates. University faculty and academic observers note that while students have a constitutional right to express personal belief, instructors have the authority to assess assignments on their academic merit. In a social science class like psychology, coursework is expected to demonstrate critical thinking and engagement with empirical evidence. Fulnecki's reliance on personal ideology rather than scholarly reasoning has drawn attention as a potential academic concern beyond the free speech debate. The case highlights the complex balance in public universities between protecting students' rights to express beliefs and maintaining rigorous academic standards, particularly when assignments require scientific reasoning. OU has not publicly commented beyond acknowledging the grade appeal process. Okay, so now let's get into some of the specifics. Let's do that. So right off the bat, let me just tell you, she complains. Fucking TPUSA comes out of the woodworks to fucking back her. Right-wing outlets write articles backing her. Then University of Oklahoma immediately comes out and cucks themselves and caves. So they posted the following statement. The University of Oklahoma takes seriously concerns involving First Amendment rights, certainly including religious freedom. Upon receiving notice from the student on the grading of an assignment, the university immediately began a full review of the situation and has acted swiftly to address the matter. First, the college acted immediately to address the academic issue raised by the student. College leaders contacted her on the day her letter was received and have maintained regular communication throughout the process. As previously stated, a former grade appeals process was conducted. The process resulted in steps to ensure no academic harm to the student from the graded assignments. Second, the student reported filing a claim of illegal discrimination based on religious beliefs to the appropriate university office. OU has a clear process for reviewing such claims, and it has been activated. The graduate student instructor has been placed on administrative leave pending the finalization of this process. To ensure fairness in the process, a full-time professor is serving as the course instructor for the remainder of the semester. OU remains firmly committed to fairness, respect, and protecting every student's right to express sincerely held religious beliefs. So the assistant professor who graded the paper, they put her on leave. They suspended her. Her, him, I actually don't know if it's who the person is. But that's insane. That's insane. All right, ready? So here is, I'm going to read you some of the article that got a bad grade. You ready for this? The article was very thought-provoking and caused me to thoroughly evaluate the idea of gender and the role it plays in our society. The article discussed peers using teasing as a way to enforce gender norms. I do not necessarily see this as a problem. God made male and female and made us differently from each other on purpose and for a purpose. God is very intentional with what he makes, and I believe trying to change that would only do more harm. Gender roles and tendencies should not be considered stereotypes. Women naturally want to do womanly things because God created us with those womanly desires in our hearts. The same goes for men. God created men in the image of his courage and strength, and he created women in the image of his beauty. He intentionally created women differently than men, and we should live our lives with that in mind. It is frustrating to me when I read articles like this and discussion posts from my classmates of so many people trying to conform to the same mundane opinion. Let me just pause to point out, you're the fucking one with the mundane opinion, and you're the fucking one conforming with the dumbass bullshit fundamentalist evangelical Christian nonsense that was obviously pumped in your head as a fucking child. You're the thoughtless one. Jesus. So they do not step on people's toes. I think that it is a cowardly and insincere way to live. It is important to use the freedom of speech we have been given in this country, and I personally believe that eliminating gender in our society would be detrimental as it pulls us farther from God's original plan for humans. What the fuck? You know nothing about God. God doesn't talk to you. You can't say the being in my head in the sky that's supposed to represent the Almighty says this, and so I'm going to reiterate that. That's not how this is a psychology class. This isn't fucking religious training. Jesus Christ. It is perfectly normal for kids to follow gender stereotypes because that is how God made us. What about all the people God didn't make like that? What about all the trans people that objectively exist in the world? I guess God made them, right? God also made the gay people, right? God also made the non-binary people, right? God also made the asexual people, right? They all exist. The reason so many girls want to feel womanly and care for others in a motherly way is not because they feel pressure to fit into social norms. It is because God created and chose them to reflect his beauty. Okay, you get it. Literally the whole thing is just like God, Goddington. Like, that's the whole fucking essay. This is a psychology class, dog. Psychology, bro. Then the professor responded, and listen to what the professor said. Mel Kurth, she, they. Please note that I am not deducting points because you have certain beliefs, but instead I am deducting points for you posting a reaction paper that does not answer the questions for this assignment, contradicts itself, heavily uses personal ideology over empirical evidence in a scientific class, and is at times offensive. While you are entitled to your own personal beliefs, there is an appropriate time or place to implement them in your reflections. I encourage all students to question or challenge the course material with other empirical findings or testable hypotheses. But using your own personal beliefs to argue against the findings of not only this article, but the findings of countless articles across psychology, biology, sociology, etc., is not best practice. You argue that abiding by normative gender roles is beneficial. It is perfectly fine to believe this, but to then say that everyone should act the same while also saying that people aren't pressured into gendered expectations is contradictory, especially since your arguments reflect a religious pressure to act in gender stereotypical ways. So you got what the person saying here? You totally fucking contradicted yourself in your piece. You can say that strict gender norms don't create gender stereotypes, but that isn't true by definition of what a stereotype is. Please note that acknowledging gender stereotypes does not immediately denote a negative connotation, a nuance this article discusses. Additionally, to call an entire group of people demonic, which I guess she did in the piece, is highly offensive, especially a minoritized population. You are entitled to your own beliefs, but this isn't a vague narrative of society pushes lies, but instead the result of countless years developing psychological and scientific evidence for these claims and directly interacting with the communities involved. You may personally disagree with this, but that doesn't change the fact that every major psychological, medical, pediatric, and psychiatric association in the U.S. acknowledges that biologically and psychologically, sex and gender is neither binary nor fixed. I implore you apply some more perspective and empathy in your work. If you personally disagree with the findings, then by all means share your criticisms, but make sure to do so in a way that is appropriate and using the methodology of empirical psychology as aligned with the learning goals in this class. If you have any additional questions or concerns about this or would like some additional educational resources, I would be happy to discuss this further and provide you with them. Holy fucking shit. Holy fucking shit. So, in other words, a total academic, intellectual smackdown is what that is. That's what we just read. Now, by the way, here's the most recent retweet from the student's mother. Self-described podcaster and media figure. That kid was a plant just in that class to further this anti-trans agenda. So Fulnecky's mom, Christy Fulnecky, retweeted, individuals who identify as trans should be automatically disqualified from holding any position as teacher or professor. So now they're attacking the very existence of the assistant professor who graded the paper correctly, by the way, and saying you shouldn't even be allowed to exist. The trans people shouldn't even be allowed to hold that position. I mean, what is there to say? The fact that the University of Oklahoma put this person on leave, put the teacher on leave, means the right is now waging an all-out assault on academic standards and intellect. That's what they're doing. They're trying to say, and this has been a long time coming, by the way, but if you are on the right, we're granted special privilege to lie, to misstate things, to be objectively wrong, and not have you correct us. We get to say and believe whatever the fuck we want, even if it conflicts with objective reality, and you have to fucking take it. And not only do you have to take it, you need to give it a fucking A. You need to grade it and give it an A, even though I'm wrong. This is what this country has done. And this is, I mean, I've said it for a long time. You guys know that the Trump regime represents right-wing postmodernism. And what that means is Trump doesn't care about the truth. He cares about his truth. And of course, he makes up his truth for whatever is beneficial in the moment for him, right? So he creates this alternate reality, lives in that reality, through the power of repetition, repeats it enough where he gets like 38% of the country to believe him over the real world information, right? And then we're constantly dealing with the fallout of that. We're constantly dealing with this alternate reality that the right created. And now with AI coming along, it gives them the ability to further entrench themselves in their fake world. And so now they're saying, sorry, if you're a teacher, you need to drop the academic standards when it comes to conservatives and basically give fundamentalist Christians a special exemption to be wrong about anything and everything, right? And they say, you're restricting my free speech if you correct me on factual grounds. Well, I fucking refuse to give in on that shit, and you should too. And this is like the death of fucking academia and the death of the Enlightenment and truth-seeking right in front of our fucking eyes. And everybody on the right and every Christian should be embarrassed hearing about this. For real. You should be embarrassed. Because they're gradually trying to destroy our society. And, you know, that might sound hyperbolic, but it's really not. Because they want a special exemption in every way, shape, and form to lie, to misstate things, to be frothing at the mouth, anti-trans bigots. I mean, this is where we're at. And so shame on all the right-wingers who took up this cause. Shame on liberals and leftists and Democrats for not immediately coming out swinging in favor of this assistant professor. This is fucking unacceptable. This is unacceptable. It's just an embarrassingly stupid essay. And, 10 years ago, everybody would have been forced to acknowledge that. But now, the right is so high on their own supply that they're fucking crusading. We'll cover this story tomorrow, but 600 people lost their jobs because when Charlie Kirk was killed, they said something that offended the right. Sometimes even just quoting Charlie Kirk. They lost their jobs. So the right is trying to, they're basically cultural totalitarians. And they're going for it all. They're going for it all. They want to dominate all of society and culture and force you to bend the knee to their fucking endless bullshit. To their warmongering, their fundamentalist Christianity, their authoritarianism. And they're making the play. They're making the play. And part and parcel is making academia cower in fear. And making them afraid to tell the truth to the right because you might lose your job if you fucking are honest with these people about how they're idiots and how they're wrong. Well, again, I refuse to do that, and I'm going to treat them like I treat everybody else, and that means correcting them when they're fucking wrong. So what a shameful fucking scenario, and it's only a matter of time, by the way, until somebody in the White House picks this up or some Republican senators pick this up and they run with it, and they do this fake victim bullshit. Because the real victim is the teacher who got suspended. That's the real fucking victim. Suspended for doing your job properly, right? But they're going to do it. They're going to play the victim for her, for Fulnecky. They're going to play the victim and act like, oh my God, this is about free speech and how dare you fucking... Meanwhile, it's the dumbest fucking essay I've ever read in my life. The reasoning... There is no reasoning. There's a lack of reasoning. It's just, God, because God. Okay, well then... just drop out of college. Like, it's not where you belong. Like, you don't know what the fuck you're talking about. You don't know what you're doing. And society should be telling you that, right? Either fucking make better arguments or get the fuck out of the way. But we're not doing this bullshit anymore where you guys get to pretend you're victims when you're just a bunch of fucking idiots. All right, y'all. That's the show. I hope you guys had a good one. And you know the drill. Everybody, please do me a big favor and subscribe to the channel. You could also support the show on Patreon. You could also support Crystal Kyle and Friends on Substack and sign up there. And, of course, subscribe to Corin's World. We're live tonight. Another Kyle and Corin coming at you. So I love you guys, and I will see you there. Have a great one. Peace. Hey, y'all, do me a favor and like and subscribe. It helps out big time in the algorithm. Click the bell as well for notifications when videos drop. And watch that video on screen right now. You know you want to.